The world thought they understood the balance of power in the Middle East, until Iran's missiles lit up the night sky. In a single night, decades of assumptions collapsed, and a truth long ignored became impossible to deny. Iran was not only willing to defend itself, but it had the precision, the strategy, and the will to strike at the heart of its adversaries. For years, tension in the region had ebbed and flowed like the desert winds. There were moments when it seemed war was inevitable, and moments when fragile diplomacy held the threads together. Yet beneath the surface, a slow burn had been building. Each sanction, each military buildup, each proxy battle in Syria, Yemen, and Iraq was another log on the fire. Iran had been tested time and again, cornered by economic warfare, cyber attacks, assassinations, and open threats from powerful nations. But history has shown, a cornered nation is not always a defeated one. Sometimes it becomes sharper, more patient, and far more dangerous. The night in question was not chosen at random. It was the culmination of years of intelligence gathering, quiet weapons development, and strategic planning. When the first reports came in, they seemed almost unbelievable. Multiple ballistic missiles, fired in rapid succession, crossing hundreds of kilometers with pinpoint accuracy. They were aimed at heavily fortified military bases that were home to foreign troops, bases many believed to be untouchable. The strikes landed within seconds of each other, lighting up the desert horizon in waves of fire. Inside those bases, alarms blared. Soldiers scrambled for cover. For a brief but unforgettable moment, the reality set in. This was no warning shot. This was a direct, deliberate hit. Surveillance satellites captured the glowing trails of the missiles, tracing their path back toward Iranian territory. The technology was undeniable. These were not crude, improvised rockets. They were advanced, guided with precision, capable of bypassing some of the world's most sophisticated defense systems. Newsrooms erupted into chaos. Anchors mid-broadcast were handed urgent updates. Maps flashed on screens showing the trajectory of the missiles. Analysts who had long dismissed Iran's missile capabilities found themselves staring at proof that could not be argued away. Meanwhile, social media lit up with videos from the ground, the thunder of explosions echoing into the night, the sky briefly illuminated as if it were daytime, the voices of civilians, some fearful, others defiant. Inside Iran, the reaction was electric. Crowds gathered in city squares chanting, waving flags, and praising what they saw as a historic act of resistance. For many Iranians, this was not simply retaliation. It was a message to the world that their country would not be bullied into submission. For the leadership, it was a carefully calculated statement: we can reach you, we will respond, and we are not afraid. But beyond the celebrations lay a deeper truth. The strike was as much about perception as it was about destruction. In the language of geopolitics, perception is power. A nation's military strength is not just measured in numbers and weapons, but in the belief that it can and will act when necessary. This night shattered the illusion that Iran was only capable of proxy warfare through allies and militias. It demonstrated that Iran could and would act directly on its own terms. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of diplomatic maneuvers. Some governments condemned the strike outright, calling it reckless and destabilizing. Others urged restraint, knowing that an unchecked cycle of retaliation could drag the region into a war far deadlier than anything seen in recent years. Military strategists in Washington, Tel Aviv, and Riyadh worked late into the night, calculating the risks of striking back versus stepping back. What made the situation more volatile was that the strike wasn't just military, it was symbolic. Every missile carried a message: your bases are not safe, your troops are not untouchable. Your dominance in this region is no longer guaranteed. And in the Middle East, where symbols often carry more weight than weapons themselves, the impact was seismic. Hours turned into days, and the world's eyes remained fixed on the region. Satellite imagery revealed the precision of the damage. Buildings were torn open as if by a giant's hand. Runways bore the scars of impact craters. Equipment worth millions was reduced to smoking wreckage. And yet, just as significant as the physical damage was the psychological one. Soldiers stationed in those bases knew now that they were within reach. Leaders knew their red lines had been crossed. Behind closed doors, intelligence agencies scrambled to understand how Iran had pulled this off. How had they launched so many missiles without early detection? How had they evaded systems designed to intercept incoming threats? Theories range from advanced stealth technology to cyber disruption of defense systems. Whatever the explanation, The conclusion was unavoidable. Iran's missile program was far more capable than previously acknowledged. And this was the real danger, not just to its enemies, but to the entire region. Because once the perception of vulnerability takes root, the balance of deterrence shifts. Allies start to reconsider their commitments. Enemies become more cautious or more desperate. The strike sent shockwaves through defense ministries worldwide, forcing them to rethink strategies they had relied on for decades. In coffee shops in Baghdad, Beirut, and Ankara, conversations turned to speculation. Would this lead to war? Would the US respond? Would Israel strike preemptively? Was Iran bluffing, or was this just the beginning? The uncertainty was almost as destabilizing as the missiles themselves. Meanwhile, oil markets reacted instantly. Prices spiked overnight, traders fearing that the Strait of Hormuz, a lifeline for global energy, could become the next flashpoint. Shipping companies began rerouting vessels. Airlines adjusted flight paths to avoid Iranian airspace. The ripple effects touched economies thousands of miles away from the blast zones. And in the halls of power, the long-term implications became clear. The Middle East had entered a new chapter. Iran had demonstrated not only a willingness to act, but an ability to do so in ways that bypassed traditional deterrence. It had changed the rules of the game, and once the rules change, they rarely go back. In the end, this was not just a missile strike. It was a declaration that the old order was gone, that the era of unchecked dominance by a handful of powers was over, that a new balance, fragile, dangerous, unpredictable, had begun to take shape. And that, perhaps, was the most unsettling truth of all. Want me to reveal the chain reaction this strike set off? Comment below. History is still unfolding.